So Marvin Bagley.
Are we really starting the podcast with Marvin Bagley?
Yeah, we are. We are starting the podcast with Marvin Bagley because I thought that game was over. I really did. And he didn't play at all in the first half. I think he clocked in maybe the 8 or 9 minute mark going into the second quarter. And I was like, okay, let's see what Bagley has to, do against the Suns. And man, he cooked. He absolutely cooked, for the second half of that game. And I was really surprised that he dropped 25.
Yeah, he had, I'm trying to pulling up his numbers right now, 25 and 7. Why does he always look more motivated when, I don't know, there's we're going to get into it a little bit later on the podcast, but every time it seems like we're counting him out. Well, maybe not you, but maybe me and some other fans, where we're like, oh, Marvin Bagley's time in Detroit, it might be coming up and it might be over with. He might just be getting real comfortable sitting on the bench. He just decides to show up. I mean, it's a meaningless game, but it looked good for him. But I just wish he would play not even the 25 points. That was great, but I just wish he showed that aggression, that hustle, and just that type of game and that type of energy every day. It doesn't have to be 25 points, but man, making yourself an option offensively, finishing around the rim, just playing winning basketball. I just would love to see that from him every game. And I don't know, maybe he should always be with one foot out the door, it seems like. I don't know.
No, I think it's just competition, honestly. If you remember, the Pistons traded for Wiseman while he was injured.
Yeah.
And he just kind of had to sit there on the bench watching last year James Wiseman get his rotation spot. And I think it's kind of lit a fire under him because ever since he did come back from injury last season and today, I mean, he just played aggressive. It seems like everything he shot went in. I think he had a 1 3-pointer today, and it looked cash. I do want to give him a shout out, and I also want to give out a shout out to Stanley Amude, who I thought played really well, and I do have a take about him, and it does involve Isaiah Livers. If Isaiah Livers cannot stay healthy, I would not be surprised if the Pistons look at Stanley Amude.
I don't know. I think those is, as much as I love Isaiah Livers, but Joe Harris, he shot the ball pretty well, and he was the fourth spot behind Isaiah Stewart. So maybe Harris gets those minutes. Maybe Beef Jerky Joe, maybe he's and I mean that shooting is so valuable, especially with Bojan sidelined. But yeah, Stanley Amude, I didn't get to watch the fourth quarter. I watched quarters 1, 2, and 3. I was driving back home from Grand Rapids, and I did have the stream on in my car. I was just listening to it like it was a radio broadcast, and I did hear his name pop up, and I'm looking at the box score, 12 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, really made his name known. You've talked about him quite a bit on this podcast because you follow the Motor City Cruise because you actually do work with them. So it's nice to see it. He showed up.
Yeah, it's so funny. That's exactly what he does when he's playing for the Crews. He's just that energy guy off the bench that can, switch defensively, give you effort, and he just loves those corner threes. And he's a really underrated passer. And he did have a pass to, I believe, Ausar in the corner to the tie of the game. So really happy for him that he showed out, and I'm sure a lot of Pistons fans are probably looking him up today. Maybe the casual Piston fan doesn't know about him, but he's a really good player, and I'm happy he did get a roster spot. But Alan actually asked a question, and I think you kind of answered it, but he said Bagley coming off the bench could keep that fire burning in him. So I think so. I do personally. I think if he does come off the bench backing up Jalen Duren, I think it could keep that fire, motivated because you don't want Wiseman taking your spot at the end of the day. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I've always said I think coming off the bench is the perfect role for him anyway. So, because he's really talented offensively. Like he's real smooth. Like he gives Cade and the other guards a lob threat. I tweeted out that it's Lob City with Marvin Bagley on the floor. And I mean, because I think his first 2 baskets were lobs from Cade. He looks great off the bench. I think what keeps the fire going is having a second number 2 overall pick behind him. And he always has to constantly look over his shoulder because Marvin Bagley is super talented, but I think it's fair enough to say he has not lived up to the billing of being the number 2 overall pick, especially being drafted before Luka Doncic and Trae Young. I mean, you got to play outstanding for that, for that to be erased from people's memories. I just think what really, other than having James Wiseman right behind him, just knowing that there's only going to be a few more opportunities for him to really be an NBA player. So you have to make the most of it right now. I think he's 24 years old right now. You're not 19, you're not 20, you're not 21, where people are like, okay, we can give him a little bit more time. Now you're 24. You're just a couple years away from entering your prime. You should be getting another large contract coming up. You have to earn it now. You're not going to, we're past the point where things are going to be given to him. And I think that's what keeps the fire burning more than just him coming off the bench. But because I think coming off the bench is the perfect role for him.
Yeah, I know. I think we both said it. Like Marvin Bagley in short spurts is perfect for this team. Because you give him like around 15 to 20 minutes a night, he's going to get you that 14 and 7. I think tonight he had 25 and 7 and shot 10 out of 14 from the field and knocked down 50% of his threes tonight. I think that role's perfect for him. I think him backing up Duran, to me, I absolutely think it's a perfect fit. You know me, I wanted to give James Wiseman a chance, but I think just in today's game, and I know it's, the first game of the preseason, but I think Bagley to me is more assertive, more aggressive, and Wiseman, while I was looking at the game today, watching the game, just kind of seems unsure of what to do, when to be aggressive, when not to be aggressive. Should I be here? Should I pass it? Should I post up? Should I grab that rebound? I think it's just still reps with him, and I do think there's a role on this team for him, especially with the foul trouble that we did have today. When you get in that much foul trouble, you're probably going to get some playing time. But I do think Wiseman still will get some playing time this season. I just think as of right now, after today's game, Bagley is kind of just the way he's played today. I think that it was very encouraging to see that we don't really have to worry about that, backup spot.
Yeah, I've been saying all week that the backup 5 spot, we'll get into this a little bit more, but I've been saying all week on Twitter, the backup 5 spot, I would give it to James Wiseman. But for a while now, I've been saying Marvin Bagley is more valuable in 22 minutes versus 28 minutes. And he really showed it in the 22 minutes he played today, 25 and 7. He looked great. And if he can just keep that fire burning, like Alan said, let him get all the minutes at the backup 5 spot. I'd be perfectly fine with it. If he just showed up, again, doesn't have to be 25 and 7, but if he can just show up and make himself known on the floor and make himself a threat, I'm okay with it. Give him all of the backup 5 spots.
For sure. I just wanted to give him, a little shout out on the podcast before we do start, because we do have a lot of topics, kind of recapping media day that did happen this week and a bunch of other stuff like jersey leaks. So it's gonna be a really fun show. But we always like to just start the podcast with something fun for you guys, and hope you guys enjoy it. But we got to talk about Ausar Thompson, Lance.
Yeah, so Cade Cunningham, Alec Burks, and Isaiah Stewart have all praised Ausar Thompson, which should come to no surprise to anybody that's been watching this team. Like, if you're a sicko, like Anthony says, he calls us the sickos. If you love to watch Summer League and preseason and a 17-win season and get on a podcast and talk about them, you really are a sicko. I don't want to see him start in the second unit. I've made that pretty clear since Summer League. I want him to start day one. He got the start tonight. He had the big fourth quarter 3 that tied the game and sent it into overtime. He finished with a double-double. I tweeted out, that dude is all over the boards and like at the rim every time a shot goes up on the offensive end. He's probably going to lead this team in offensive rebounds. He is just incredible. I want to see him flourish next to Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, even though Jaden Ivey came off the bench tonight. I'm just going to reiterate, like I've said again on the podcast in the past, I think starting him allows him to focus on defense, allows him to focus on rebounding, allows him to focus on being that connector and being a secondary ball handler, playmaker, Cade Cunningham. And it takes pressure off him of being the guy off the bench. I would rather have him just ease into a role as a scorer and as a shooter. And I think that's what you're going to get from him as a day starter. But I'm giving him praise just like all of his teammates. What are your thoughts, Anthony?
So obviously we know who he is. Obviously, like him being drafted 5th overall, and then watching Summer League and falling in love with him as a basketball player. I think me and you literally had like 5 topics after Summer League just about like how great he was.
Yeah.
But then like you kind of go into this depression as a basketball fan because you don't get any basketball until media day happens. And then you get all excited again. And that's how I felt listening to Cade Cunningham, Alec Burks, and Isaiah Stewart talk about Ausar Thompson. Even Joe Harris, to an extent, was really praising him as a player. I love it that this team is, praising a guy that was taken 5th overall because, sometimes we hear some stuff like, yeah, he's going to have a great career. He's going to be good. He's going to be a good player. But like, the way that they were talking about him, they're like, yeah, it's like he's so advanced, like defensively, like he can fight over a screen and get there without following. Like everything that they were saying about him, like Cade's like, yeah, his passing doesn't get talked about enough. Like, why aren't we talking about him as a playmaker? He's a phenomenal playmaker. Like stuff like that as a fan just makes me feel confident in the draft choice because I know there were some people, us included, we weren't really sure if he was the right pick at 5. I mean, there was a lot of debates among Pistons fans of, who we should pick with the 5th overall pick. But I think, looking back on it, Troy Weaver made the right draft choice. And even today, man, that kid was everywhere. He stuffed the stat sheet. He tied the game in overtime, hit a big time 3-pointer. Who says that kid's not, doesn't have that clutch gene? He's willing to take that 3-point shot to tie the game. So I love hearing comments like that from his teammates, and it has me excited for the future.
Dude, and just the preseason game tonight, him playing defense on Devin Booker. Devin Booker's going to cook no matter what, but when you can make things difficult and get in his head just a little bit, which I think Ausar Thompson did, you've won the battle, in my opinion. Again, you're never going to stop a Devin Booker. You're never going to stop a Kevin Durant. They're some of the best scorers in the NBA. But if you can make things difficult and force them into some tough shots, you are winning that battle. And Ausar, for a rookie, man, he showed up, and his defense is just so clean too. I don't know how he does it. He makes it look so effortless when he's on that end, like moving the feet, keeping the hands, not fouling anybody. Like, he's just so good. I'm so happy he's a Detroit Piston, and he's going to be so great for this team, man. He's going to be a day 1 starter, man, no doubt in my mind. And he might make some of these other young Pistons expendable, where when the Pistons are ready to compete, you might see some of our favorites be traded away just because Ausar Thompson has shown up. I mean, it was only 12 points, but the way he was moving without the ball, the guy has so much energy. He doesn't stop. He just keeps going. And man, you love to see that in a basketball player, because some guys, once they don't have the ball, they disappear on the floor. Not Ausar Thompson. I could just keep talking and talking and talking about him and just praising him for what he did. And it's only 1 preseason game. He might play like trash preseason game number 2. Man, we might just walk this back a little bit. But for right now, man, you can only say good things about him.
Yeah, someone had mentioned it. They had a comment. John Buck, shout out to him, said he's our Draymond with a smaller physique but athletic. I absolutely love that comment. Because when I think about Draymond Green, I think of a glue guy, and I think of a guy that does all the little things that doesn't show up in the box score. And that's exactly what Ausar Thompson did today. Even though he did stuff the stat sheet, if you do look at the box score for Ausar Thompson, he had a phenomenal game. But it's just the little stuff that he does. Like you were saying, the cuts, crashing the glass. Like he was crashing the glass so hard, it looked like he almost had a a poster on Wannanubi. Like, I love the fact that he's crashing the glass with the bigs out there. This tells me that he wants that rebound, and I'm just excited for the future, man. Excited for him, and I know a lot of Pistons fans are really excited for him to, start. I think he's going to contribute day one with Monty's comments this week during training camp. I think Monty's really excited to use him in a similar fashion as he did with Mikal Bridges in Phoenix. And that really excites me because you look at Mikal Bridges right now in Brooklyn. Uh, the guy is fully unleashed because he has to be that number one option. But I think Ausar has all the tools to be a two-way player. I've told you that. I believe in the jump shot. I believe in the hype with him. I think he's going to be that wing that the Pistons have just desperately needed for the last 10 years. But I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit because I'm getting a little bit too excited. But future's bright for sure for the Detroit Pistons.
Oh, for sure. He's going to be incredible. One final comment on him. When he's in transition defensively, I love that his head is like on a swivel and his hands are always up. Like, I think he batted one. He probably batted a few more down, but I noticed one in particular where it was in the first half where he's coming back, and it would have been an easy 2 points for the Phoenix Suns, but he was like running backwards, head was looking back, eyes were looking back, and then he threw his hands up and batted the ball out of bounds. That's just, he's so active everywhere. He really is going to be phenomenal, man. I just cannot wait to see his growth throughout the rest of this season, man. It's going to be awesome. So this might be the most controversial quote from Pistons Media Day, and it comes from head coach Monty Williams. He says, I'm going to read the quote for you guys real quick. He says, where I'm looking for growth from Jalen Duren is when he's not at the center position. I think there's an opportunity for him to play the 4. If we see opportunities to go big, it's going to be on him to be versatile, to rotate on the backside. And Detroit fans, they were upset. They're tired of hearing about the 2 big lineup. It hasn't worked, and you don't really need it in today's NBA. The teams that we have seen have success with 2 big lineups. We've seen Milwaukee, we've seen Boston, we've seen Los Angeles. But the thing that they have at the 4 and the 5 spot that the Pistons don't is versatility. Unless Isaiah Stewart's 3-point shot starts to fall more consistently, and then you will see Detroit start heading in the right direction when it comes to versatility from the 4 and the 5 spot. In my opinion, I don't mind Jalen Duren playing the 4 because I would rather see his career kind of be more of like a Bam Adebayo or a Chris Webber versus a Tyson Chandler. I feel like Tyson Chandler, I've heard on a lot of podcasts that dude had an incredible skill set coming in. He just didn't get to use it because he was 7 foot and they wanted it to play him one way. I don't want to see Jalen Duren get stuck in that one way. So while the Pistons are young, while they're not competing, while they're not playing for anything, experiment a little bit. Try him at the 4 spot. Allow him to grow his game. Let him be like those Bams or those Chris Webbers, those type of finesse guys that can also add a little power to their game. That's what I want to see from Jalen Duren. I have no issue with Monty Williams wanting to play Jalen Duren when the opportunity arises. I have no problem with that. And I even think some fans took it a little out of context. I really just think he meant when teams switch and they have a mismatch with Isaiah Stewart, who right now has a better post game than Jalen Duren, a little bit more finesse, a little bit more touch around the rim, that when they switch, we're going to have Jalen Duren go. We're going to have Isaiah Stewart go to the post, and we're going to have Jalen Duren kind of float more to the outside to clear more space for Isaiah Stewart to operate a little bit. I think that's more of what he meant, where it's going to be in those small pinches, maybe not necessarily for like a full game. We're going to see Jalen Duren play the power forward. And also, I think it comes down to what the matchups are game into game out. But what are your thoughts on that quote, Anthony?
Well, I do have the video of him talking about it because I like to give context because we could read a quote on this podcast and people could take it completely the opposite way. But I want to play this 55-second clip from Media Day about Monty Williams talking about it, and then I'll kind of give you my opinion about Jalen Duren possibly playing power forward. So here's the clip of Monty Williams talking about it.
his ability to guard the ball and want to guard the ball, and his trash talk after he stops someone is pretty cool. He's pretty creative with a number of things that he says after he blocks someone's shot or he gets a stop. Where I'm looking for growth from him is when he's not at the center position. I think there's an opportunity for him to play four if we see opportunities to go big, and it's going to be on him to be versatile in rotating on the backside, and that's something that I think he's more than capable of doing with enough reps. But I think his IQ and his level of capacity is a bit further along than most young guys.
So that's why I wanted to play the clip, because there's a lot of context in that video of what you can take away. So he says, when the opportunity presents itself to go big, and I thought of two teams immediately when he said that. I thought of the Boston Celtics with Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford, which that's a huge duo. I thought of actually three teams now. I thought of the Cleveland Cavaliers with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. And I also thought of the Milwaukee Bucks with, Giannis and Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis and all those guys. So I think situation is everything in the NBA. And I think when you have four bigs on your roster, you're definitely going to try to slow those teams down, because those are elite teams that I all named off. Those are all deep playoff teams that are expected to make the playoffs and try to compete for a championship. I have no problems with Monty saying, hey, I want to see how he develops as a power forward. Maybe he has a game where it makes sense for him to play power forward, and he does have a mid-range game. He has nice touch around the rim. I think his three-point shot, like watching the clips in practice, I think that's a work in progress, but I do think there's something there. I don't know if it's ready right now, but maybe in a few years. I have no problems with him saying that. I just think some people saw this quote and they ran with it. That's why I wanted to play the clip, because there is context. Yeah. But like I said, I think it's his mashups. It depends if you're playing a big team like the Cleveland Cavaliers, Milwaukee Bucks, or the Boston Celtics. But has your opinion changed at all since I played that clip?
No, I still think it comes down to, again, opportunity is the biggest thing. And there are a few more teams that do go to with two bigs. Like we're going to see San Antonio do it this year. Minnesota does it with Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. Trying to think of a few more teams. You've already mentioned a couple of them. I mean, even the New York Knicks with Julius Randle and Mitchell Robinson. You could even say the Orlando Magic with Paolo Banchero and Wendell Carter. Again, those teams have a little bit more versatility at the four spot than the Pistons do right now, because the jury's still out on Isaiah Stewart and his three-point shot. But again, I think this can be a positive thing when the opportunity arises just for Jalen Duren's growth. I know Bam, I looked back at he didn't play a ton of power forward in the NBA, but there were moments when the Heat I think they had Kelly Olynyk on their roster where they played those two together, and Bam got the minutes at the four when those two were on the floor. So I think that ultimately helped Bam's growth, and I think it can help Jalen Duren's. So my opinion doesn't change. I just think it's a smart move on Monty Williams. I don't think we're going to see Jalen Duren play the four a lot this season. But again, if the opportunity arises, why not have him go out there and do it? We're not playing for anything this season anyway, other than maybe a potential play-in game. But yeah, I would personally wouldn't mind seeing it.
Yeah, because I see a lot of comments because some people automatically assume, like, we'll put Wiseman at center and Duren at power forward because that's what they did in the summer league. But I think the biggest difference between all those teams that we did mention is they have elite guard play.
Yeah.
Not to say that we don't, because we both think Cade Cunningham is that guy, and we think very highly of Jaden Ivey. But, like, when you have Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland as your backcourt, like, Darius Garland, I think, is really slept on. Just in my opinion, I think he's one of the best up-and-coming point guards in the NBA. Like, that guy can just pass it for days, and having an elite guard and a backcourt mate, Donovan Mitchell, next to him, they can make it work. the Celtics just got Drew Holiday, who, in my opinion, I think is still one of the best defensive point guards in the NBA, but he's an underrated passer too. And you have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum too. It's just like the Pistons can play a too big lineup, but it's really going to be dependent on is if Isaiah Stewart can become a stretch four. Can he hit those 3-point shots at a 35-36% rate? Can Cade Cunningham get the ball to Jalen Duren? Can Jaden Ivey do the same? I think it can work. It's just there's a lot that goes into making it successful. And I think the Pistons are really banking on everything I just talked about. But I think eventually they will step away from it. I think this season they just want to see if it does work. But most NBA teams don't really play the two big lineups. Like, you don't really see it too often. But, I mean, if they want to try it out. But I could see them going a more traditional route with just one center, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, but I mean, even with when other teams do go two bigs, those bigs, they do have more perimeter skills at the four spot. Then it's not like it was in the 90s and the early 2000s. You don't see any team play that style anymore with like two bigs that have strictly back to the basket, maybe only play out to 15 feet. You definitely don't see that anymore. But you do see two big lineups. It's just there's a lot of versatility. There's a lot of perimeter play from the four spot on a lot of these teams. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns lives on the 3-point line. Julius Randle, he can go out to the 3-point line, or he can take it in. He can even put the ball on the ground. Paolo Banchero, he's phenomenal at that four spot. He's a mismatch. He's a nightmare for other teams defensively. Victor Wembanyama, I mean, again, still don't know what he is, but he's 7'4". He can shoot threes. He can put the ball on the ground. There's just a lot of versatility, and I think that's where the Pistons are a step behind. But if you have that elite guard play combined with the four that actually can hit 34-35% from three, you will be all right. But again, like I said, the jury's still out on Isaiah Stewart in that 3-point shot.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking, like, even back when the Pistons had Blake Griffin and they had Andre Drummond on the roster, you had a power forward that could work in the post. He could hit a three and he could put the ball on the floor. Like, the Pistons just don't have that. Like, that's the thing. Like, can Isaiah Stewart develop a game where he can put the ball on the floor? I don't know yet. I think his 3-point shot is improved a lot. But like I said, there's a lot that goes into it. And I think Monty will get these guys right. But we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. I'm just not sure, man. Like, I don't want to sit up here after one preseason game and be negative.
Yeah.
But we'll probably revisit this topic again, probably mid-season, and saying like, hey, you have enough bigs. I don't think you need to carry four. Maybe you go the traditional route and try to find a power forward that can, stretch the floor and spread the offense out instead of clogging the paint.
This is why I want to see Bojan at the 4 and Isaiah Stewart off the bench. I think Isaiah Stewart at the backup 5 spot still makes a ton of sense. He looked good defensively. He was able to keep up with Bradley Beal. I know he got into early foul trouble. But, man, if you bring him off the bench, you don't really worry about the foul trouble stuff anymore. You just worry about him going out there and playing tough defense and getting a couple post-ups and just playing with a ton of energy and a high motor. But we'll see. Okay. The backup center spot has come down to Marvin Bagley III and James Wiseman. It seems like someone kind of took a lead, though. Pistons fans are split on who should take that role. Marvin Bagley III is the better offensive player. I mean, he's gifted on that side of the ball. James Wiseman is the better athlete with ideal length to protect the rim, but he's still inexperienced. He's only played 84 regular season games, but neither are great rebounders unless they're motivated. So it's still up in the air, and I believe you actually have a clip for us to play, right, Anthony?
Yeah, this is from Amari Sankofa because he had asked Monty this week about the backup center position. So here it is.
It's still early in camp, but when you look at this big man rotation, how do you see Wiseman and Marvin kind of fitting in, and what have you seen from them in camp so far?
Yeah, it's a work in progress right now to figure out which one of those guys is going to step up and be more than likely the backup big. And that's a tough spot because both guys, I wouldn't say deserve it, but They have the talent. They have Bags has a body of work. Wise is still young and learning. They both have enough ability to command that spot. We're just going to wait to see who steps up and takes it.
It's pretty interesting.
I love the honesty from him, though. I love the honesty from head coach Monty Williams, man. That was great.
Yeah, like he's basically saying, like, I haven't decided who's getting that backup center spot, but if you show me that you want it, then it's yours. Like, he's not setting a roster in stone. I think that's what I liked about that video. But like you said, after today's performance from Marvin Bagley, he's definitely a little bit he's ahead of James Wiseman right now for the backup center spot, in my opinion.
Do you think Marvin Bagley takes it after preseason?
I don't know. Like today, he looked like just a man possessed. Like he was scoring like a point a minute. I think he had like 25 points in like 22 or 23 minutes. Wiseman out there, he just kind of seemed a little bit overwhelmed at times. But I'm willing to hold my opinion until after preseason is over, because Wiseman could come out the next three preseason games and just make me look stupid. You know, you never know. Like he could get in the film room and see what he needs to work on. But I think Bagley is more of a seasoned vet, and he knows what his strengths and weaknesses are, and he just exploited them today.
See, I think James Wiseman ends up coming away with it after preseason. And I know it's going to sound crazy after Marvin Bagley had the performance he had. But James Wiseman, he still had 7 rebounds in 16 minutes. He was still active on the glass, which is something that a few of us, you and I, have talked about, where it doesn't seem like he's always motivated to get rebounds. I just think with that length and that athleticism, it could be used so much more, especially as he gains experience, versus Marvin Bagley's offensive touch. Because I still think James Wiseman, he's still a good offensive player. Like, he's not too far behind Marvin Bagley. Marvin Bagley's just more redefined on the block, and he's more confident on that side. But James Wiseman, again, has all the athletic tools. He has that length. He can, when he wants to jump, he can just jump straight up out of the rim. He can be a lob threat for Cade, Ivy, Ausar, Monte Morris. I think James Wiseman ultimately takes it, because there's also one other point that I want to make. Marvin Bagley did say he didn't want to be a center. He wanted to be a power forward. So even though he's motivated right now to play the 5, I don't know how much longer he wants to keep up with it, because he was pretty much going up against Devin Eubanks, who is a physical center. But how does he feel when he's going up against Joel Embiid or, Rudy Gobert or Nikola Jokic or Zach Collins, I can't believe I just said Zach Collins, or Anthony Davis, or Jakob Poeltl in Toronto, or Jonas Valanciunas? These guys are all very physical players. How does Marvin Bagley stack up against those guys during the regular season? Because again, he's already expressed he doesn't want to play the 5 spot. He would rather play the power forward, but this team doesn't need him to play the power forward. The Pistons need him. They need a backup 5. So that's why I think James Wiseman ultimately takes it away, just for all those other factors that I said, but also just because Marvin Bagley says, I don't want to be a 5. And I don't think he'd be petty about it. I just don't know if he'd always going to be motivated to play the 5 spot.
Well, it's funny because we talked about that, I believe, in April. He said, I want to play power forward. And he said, I'm going to focus a lot on shooting this offseason.
Yeah.
And his tune completely changed during media day, because someone did ask him about that. Like, hey, do you still want to play? And he's just like, oh, I'll play wherever they want to play me. So obviously they gave him a talking to, saying like, hey, like, power forward is kind of, filled up over here, but we need you as a backup center on this basketball team. And I think, to your point, he's good enough to go against backup centers and get his points. And I think the only 2 things that people really knock on him is health, because it seems like he just has these freak injuries that are out of his control. And I think on the defensive end, it's something where I know he's not a lockdown defender. I don't need him to be a lockdown defender. I'm not asking him to block, 3-4 shots a game. I'm just asking him to, be serviceable. Like I don't need you, blocking down people. But if you do, that's great. But if you can just be a serviceable defender, I think most Pistons fans are happy with that. And if he can do that, I think the backup spot is his. I think Wiseman is just too inexperienced right now. He just hasn't had the reps because of injuries as well, but it's not his fault. But I do think Monty says, like, hey, like, whoever takes it, takes it. It's up for grabs. It's just up to you guys to, battle it out these next 3 preseason games and in training camp. So we're going to have to wait and see who does get that spot. But I would say as of today, October 8th, Marvin Bagley definitely has the edge, in my personal opinion, after tonight's preseason game against the Suns.
Do you think there's any chance where they make a move to bring in a backup center, like more of a veteran? Because I know Monty loves veterans.
Yeah.
And I mean, Marvin Bagley, you could call him a veteran because he has been in the league for a while now, but he's still only 24 years old. But a guy that has been in the league a little bit longer, can be a little bit more physical, knows what that role is and is comfortable in that role. Maybe the Pistons go that direction, because he really, in that clip that you played, it didn't seem like he was too excited about the backup 5 spot. He just kind of seemed like, unfortunately, this is what we have, and this is what we have to work with. So that's why it's up for grabs, and whoever just shows out, they're going to get it. But maybe there's something in Troy Weaver's back pocket where he's like, I'm going to go out and get him a backup 5, someone that we can rely on. That's going to help us that's going to help us push us over the top and become a winning team.
So I just looked up available free agent centers, and one that's available, because this is on Spot Track right now, and he played with the Suns, is Bismack Biyombo.
Ooh, okay.
He's more known for his defense. He's not going to score a whole lot of points. I don't know if the Pistons are going to use their last roster spot of trying to clear cap to sign a veteran center. If they did, that would kind of tell me that they're looking to win. He was a name on the list. I don't know if that's a player that they might go after. I think Blake Griffin's going to retire. I think Blake Griffin will never play in a Pistons uniform again, but wouldn't that be something?
That would be crazy.
Yeah. And then one more name that I saw was Willie Cauley-Stein, but I think I saw that he signed overseas to go play. He's another guy that, protect the rim, catch lobs. I don't really know what they're going to do with the backup center position, but, Troy Weaver kind of teased that, like, hey, we do have an open roster spot open, and we're keeping our options available. So I don't know what position he's looking for personally. If it was me, I would look more for more small forward depth, but that's just me. But now you got me thinking maybe they do go after a veteran center. Maybe they try to trade for one that's just, on a team right now that can't get any minutes. Maybe a Nerlens Noel reunion.
I mean, I wouldn't be disappointed in Bismack Biyombo. I mean, I still have faith in Marvin Bagley and James Wiseman, but he's a guy that can give you a good 12 to 15 minutes, good defense, knows how to protect the rim. Again, knows his roles, not going to complain about not getting touches or anything. Not saying James Wiseman or Marvin Bagley would, but they're more offensive players than defensive. And I think this team, they need a veteran big that can help them out in that spot. But hey, we'll see.
Yeah, I know. Ellen said Steven Adams, which I don't know if they would. I don't think he's available personally. Like, that would be a dream come true if he was, because, man, Steven Adams can set picks for days. Like, him and Cade in the pick and roll would be fun to watch, but I don't really think Steven Adams is an option. But if he was, I would definitely be interested.
For sure. New jerseys have been leaked for the Detroit Pistons, and I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of them. I know a lot of people are. I like the little crossbones they did on the sides of the jersey, but they look kind of just plain and kind of boring to me, even though it is a completely different color scheme than what we're used to. And I think with those jerseys, if they are the real ones, and I'm going to get to that in a second, they're kind of paying homage to the bad boys, going with the black, which I think I think that part's pretty cool. I'm just not a big fan of them. Those red ones we had, Cade's rookie year, those were the cream of the crop. I wish they played in those all 82 games a season. Those are by far my favorite jerseys. Again, I don't even know if they're real. Anthony, you could clear it up for me, because I did see one Twitter user say that those jerseys were already being sold on eBay. And I don't know, that makes me a little wary, but maybe they're the new city jerseys.
Well, I do have a picture of the city jerseys that I will put on the screen, because there are some people that haven't seen them. Some people aren't on social media. Maybe they're just on YouTube. But these are the city jerseys. I have 3 separate shots of them so you guys can see it. I'm going to put it on the screen for you guys. So you can see it. This is why I think it's real, is when you look at it, it's got the Bad Boys cursive from their old, Bad Boys merch from, the late 80s, early 90s. And you kind of have, if you see right here, it's got a CD for Chuck Daly too. And it says City Edition right here. And it's got Chuck Daly's autograph.
I see that.
I think it's cool. You're paying homage to the Bad Boys. And I don't know if you guys can see it, but there are crossbones on the side of the jersey. My only thing is, if you were going to make crossbones, make them white. Like, I can barely see them. Dude, I can't see that like at all. But I think all in all, for the restrictions that Nike has with these jerseys, like, a lot of people don't know, like, Nike has so much restrictions of what you can create, what you can't. I think a 7 out of 10 for me. I like that they're paying homage to the Bad Boys. I thought the paying homage to Chuck Daly too was cool. My only thing is, it looks like a Chicago Bulls jersey.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
But I like it. Like all in all, like, I think our city jerseys, for the most part, they're better than the racing stripes. They're better than the chrome jerseys from a few years ago.
Those chrome jerseys are underrated. Do not tell me they're bad. I loved those jerseys.
No, dude, the chrome jerseys were absolute dog shit. No. No. What's it?
Oh, no, go on. Go ahead. I'll ask you in a second.
People are just asking if it's orange or red. It's red. I would have liked it if it was orange. Kind of like, because you're wearing a Bad Boys sweatshirt right now.
Oh, yeah.
I could tell. Yeah, like, if it would have been like that orange, and maybe the skull on in the middle of the jersey, I think a lot of fans would know. I was like, oh, it's the Bad Boys. That would have been cool. But I don't know, man. It's an interesting jersey. I'll say that.
What's been your favorite jersey since Cade's rookie year? What has been your favorite jersey that they've unleashed?
I will say the red alternatives from a few years ago, those were really cool. Personal favorite of mine. I'm a fan of the St. Cecilias. I know some people aren't. I think a lot of people think that they're trash, but I think they're pretty nice. But all in all, I did like those. And I mean, how can you not like the teals?
Yeah.
Even though that wasn't, Cade's era, it was a throwback era. I mean, who doesn't like a nice teal jersey? I know some people on Twitter don't, but hey, I'm not going to get into that.
No, I think those red jerseys, they were so smooth, man. I would love to see those every single year. Like I said already, if you wanted to play in them all 82 games, I have no problem with them. I really do wish those red jerseys were the home jerseys for the Pistons. That's how cool they look to me. It's such a sleek jersey, and it's so cool. It feels so modern, and I feel like fans of other teams would just buy those jerseys if they saw them more and more. That teal on the side, just how it blends all the different eras together. They really went out of their way to make a special jersey when they made those red alternates. And plus the Slam magazine shoot with Cade Cunningham when he was wearing the big red fur jacket. It's just so cool. Like, all of that it was sweet. And I feel like they've really just been missing the mark with this jersey. I do not love this leaked jersey. I did like the St. Celia's with you, man. Those ones are really cool too. And shout out to the Pistons helping restore that gym. I believe that was something I think they did recently where they're putting more money. They've been putting money into different basketball courts all over Michigan. So that's really cool. But to see them help out and restore St. Celia, which has a ton of rich basketball history from Isaiah Thomas. I think Magic Johnson even played there for a few summers. It's really cool to see them do that. But again, not a fan of these jerseys. They could grow on me. Maybe once I see the last name on the back and the number, who knows?
Oh my God. I love the YouTube comment section. You probably wonder why I lost it. It's because of this comment. I love you, Ben, man. You make me laugh. Oh, man.
That's good. We appreciate that.
I know some people did have their favorite jerseys, the red ones during the going to work era.
Those ones
Organic Lindo said that those were some of his favorite jerseys. I believe there's another one. I think Ryan had one. The red ones from the Sekou year. So it was the red alternate with the blue down. There was like a blue racing stripe down the middle.
Yeah, I remember those.
Those were pretty cool. I think my all-time, like I told you, I hate the chromes.
Yeah,
the chromes, they're just, I can't. Or the Motor City sleeve ones were trash too.
Those I did like the color scheme on those ones though. I didn't like the sleeves though.
Bro, I remember LeBron having such a fit that he had the worst sleeves, like because they were like right here.
Yeah,
he was like ripping them off, man. Like NBA's got to do a better job of making these jerseys.
I know a lot of people love the lightning bolt ones, the ones that they wore in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like those ones just because I didn't like that the era that they came. I didn't like them being so baggy like that. I figure if they were like a little bit more of a slimmer cut, like you see jerseys now, they probably look a little better. Maybe they do bring those out again, but it might work the younger group of Pistons than it did for the 2004 squad.
Okay, for sure.
Our beloved Bojan, he is out with a calf strain. He joins the short list along with Isaiah Livers. And apparently Monte Morris, I missed this news that he was out for this game. But back to Bojan, he's dealing with a calf strain, and he will be reevaluated in 1 week. I mean, it sucks not to see him out there, but he's a veteran. He knows he can pick up where he left off last year. He'll be fine. I'm not worried about him. It just stinks that the leg injury that sidelined him last year I don't even know if he went out with a right calf strain last year, but he did have some lower leg issues, some lower body issues, I should say, and they're still bothering him at the start of this season.
Yeah, it's so when I heard the news with his calf strain, I'm like, hey, it's preseason. A lot of guys get injured in preseason, and Bojan like literally said in his presser that usually I'm playing for my national team. He's like, I didn't do it this year. He's like, I had like 3 to 4 months off. It's like the first time in my career I've never had this much time off. And he's just like, I don't know. It's weird. So, maybe it's just him not maybe being in shape. And he is, I think, 34 or 33 years old. I don't remember his exact age, but it's not just him, man. Like I looked at the injury report, like your boy Livers we talked about, he's going to be out. Monte Morris tonight, I guess it was like a back injury or a lower body injury, so he was out. Duren got injured today with the ankle injury. We're in mid-season form, man.
Yeah,
we already got an injury list long, but hopefully these guys are all good to go outside of Livers for opening night. Yeah, I really hope this team stays healthy this year, man. Like it's only the first preseason game, and we already got a injury list with 3-4 guys on it.
Yeah, I think with Bojan though and Monte Morris, they're just being cautious. They're veterans though. They might have a little rust to kick off at the beginning of the season, but they'll be fine. They'll be able to get right back into midseason form within the first week or two of regular season. I'm not worried about those guys. Isaiah Stewart, there's a little misconception of who he is. He views himself as a power forward. He played a lot of center last year. He has the size of a power forward, but He's not athletic like you want in today's power forward. He has a good back to the basket game, pretty nice touch around the rim. He has good footwork where he can be versatile on defense. But again, I don't know what he is. It seems like he's anything from a power forward to a center to Nick Collison coming off the bench. I have no idea. It's a little interesting, but he views himself as a power forward, and I believe you have a clip to play for us.
Yes, yes, I do.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely see myself more as a power forward now. Especially having this group of bigs. I see myself as a power forward. And, a key this summer. Even after talking to, Coach Monty was continue to get comfortable with doing certain things. He's gonna have me do this season at the 4. So that's been a lot of my focus this season.
So I think two things I took out of that clip, and I do apologize for being really quiet. For some reason, the Pistons media press conferences are always super quiet. I don't know why. But basically what Isaiah Stewart said is have to play power forward because of all the bigs on this team. And Coach Monty told me, we're going to use you in a lot of different actions at the power forward position. So looks like what Marvin Bagley wanted to do, Isaiah Stewart gets to do. He gets to play that power forward position. But I think both of us, all this summer and even last season, we always viewed him as a power forward. We always viewed him as a guy that, even though he was playing center, we always said, he's a power forward trying to play center. I like that the Pistons have a direction for him and they want to play him at that power forward spot. But maybe there's some confusion among fans because sometimes I will see fans saying, why do we play two centers in the starting lineup? Like, yeah. Stewart's 6'8". You're not going to play a 6'8" center. He doesn't have the athleticism of a Ben Wallace, right? We understand that. But I think him as a power forward is completely fine.
Yeah, but he seems kind of unsure of it in that clip. Like, I think, he didn't play terribly today. He did miss, I think, his first 4 3-point shots. He did set some solid screens, got into a little foul trouble. I think he's just too physical to be a power forward. And even though he can keep up and he can switch, you saw him switch all over the floor tonight. I still think he'd be better. He'd be best as a backup 5, and I'm going to continue to stick with that. Let him just come off the bench. Let him use that energy. Let him use that hustle. Allow him to be physical with guys and play him for like 22 minutes. He might be more valuable and better in that stretch. I would rather have Isaiah Stewart available for the fourth quarter when guys are tired and he just keeps going than just have him start games at the 4 out of necessity. Give me Bojan at the 4, give me Isaiah Stewart at the back of 5, and let Marvin Bagley and James Wiseman watch from the bench.
Yeah, I know you've always had that opinion with Isaiah Stewart. You want to see him off the bench. This is where it gets tricky now, right? You extended him this summer, which shout out to him for getting extended. I applaud players getting paid. But I think the organization has always wanted to have 2 bigs. Even before Troy got here, they've always wanted to have 2 bigs. And I think both of us can agree that the only way it's really going to work is if that outside shot is falling. Yep. I know Monty said he wanted to use him in more post-up scenarios, but my only thing with that is for a big, he doesn't have the best hands.
No,
and it seems like a lot of times, like just an easy bounce pass, he doesn't have a full grip on it, and it's a turnover. I don't know if that's something he can work on, and getting better hand-eye coordination. I'm not sure, but I'm willing to be patient with him because I think this team defensively, especially switching. You saw it tonight. He guarded Devin Booker. He guarded Bradley Beal. He guarded Kevin Durant. I think switchability on the defensive end of the floor with Isaiah Stewart is something that the Pistons value. And I think a lot of Pistons fans probably saw that tonight of, him switching onto guards, forwards, and centers. I think that's important, but it's just the hands for me when he catches a pass. Because I know it's going to be a turnover. I just do. That's not really his strength. I think his strength is, more from the outside and, hustle points, like you were saying, just being that hustle, being that glue guy off the bench. I think that's where he's going. That's just his bread and butter, in my personal opinion. But maybe he can get better at catching a basketball. I'm not going to put him on the tier list with Butterfinger, Aaron Baines, but he's definitely a close second. But that's okay. None of these players are perfect, but that's only my concern with him is playing power forward. Is the outside shot for me has to fall, and he just does not have great hands around the rim.
No, and again, I don't mind the contract. It doesn't come into play till next season, where he'll be making $15 million, which is 10% of the cap, and then by the fourth year of that contract, it will be 7% of the cap. So it's really not that bad. I mean, Naz Reid got paid, and he's a backup center or a backup four. Naz Reid, he does have a little bit more offensive ability, I guess. He has better hands for sure. But Isaiah Stewart, there's still a role for him, and again, I just don't think it's starting. Like, I would rather they can experiment. They can experiment with him at the 4 this year, experiment with Duren at the 4 if they want as well. But eventually you're going to have to, I think you're eventually going to have to go out and find someone to play the 4 for the Pistons. I think if the starting lineup stays the way it does, where it's Cade and Burks in the backcourt, Ausar at the 3, Stewart at the 4, and Jalen Duren at the 5, your weakest position is power forward. Even if Isaiah Stewart does develop a consistent three-point shot, it's just his game is so much hustle and so physical. It would be hard. I feel like he's always going to get in foul trouble, but you can eliminate that fear just by having him come off the bench and be a high-energy guy, someone that can be physical, and you don't have to worry about it because you still got Duren and, some other guys to fill in. But I don't know. It's still I don't know, man. I wish all the best to Isaiah Stewart. I don't really got much more to say about him, man. I don't want to – he's one of my favorite players right now on the Pistons. I don't want to talk negative about him. I don't
think it's negative. You're just critiquing it. That's all. But there was a question earlier, and we didn't really talk about it, but I know both of us were kind of surprised. You even mentioned it with the starting lineups. Truth tell, I had a question about Ivy today. Why didn't he start? Was that talked about yet? I wanted to talk about this for a couple of minutes. Kind of give you my opinion why I think Burke started over Ivy. Had nothing to do with Jaden Ivey. I think it had more to do with Bojan not being available. Burks is arguably you could probably put him in your top 3 of 3-point shooters on this team.
Yeah.
I think that's the reason why he started and Ivy didn't. If Bojan was healthy, Ivy probably does start today. But I think that was probably the biggest reason, just the way I saw it from my point of view. But why do you think Ivy didn't start today?
No, that was my exact reason. I even tweeted that out. I think I said, I'm not worried about Ivy coming off the bench. Bojan is out. Burks gives us that shooting that we need. And also, Monte Morris was out, so you needed another ball handler out on the floor. You had Killian Hayes. He did show up. He had a good game. But then you also played Marcus Sasser some pretty big minutes in preseason. But after that, it was Xavier Simpson. So it made sense to bring Ivy off the bench. And I don't know. He looked good against the second unit. He looked good kind of being that spark off the bench. He provided some juice late in that game. I mean, dude, I think he made his first three-pointers. I think he was perfect in the first quarter when he came off the bench. Maybe missed one shot, but he looked good coming off the bench. And he does have a skill set where you could see him thriving off the bench, and he could still get minutes alongside Cade and Ausar. But I mean, as a scorer and a guy that attacks the rim and puts pressure on the defense that way, it does make sense to bring him off the bench. I would still rather see him start because I think his game is going to thrive next to Cade and Ausar. And I think his defense wasn't great tonight, but you saw him put a lot of effort in on the defensive side tonight against the Phoenix Suns. Last night, if you're listening to it on Monday, last night against the Phoenix Suns, his defense looked a lot better. He definitely put a lot more effort into it. But I agree with you. I just think it's because Bojan was out.
Yeah, and I mean, he looked great. Someone had mentioned his defensive effort. That's something that it's a weakness of his, but Suns still tried to exploit it. But, he did his best out there. Knocked down some 3-point shots, which I thought was really crucial because that was a knock on him coming out of the draft that he's a poor 3-point shooter, but damn near shot 35% last season. So I think that's something that I did want to touch on for a couple of minutes because I know a lot of Pistons fans were really upset that Ivy wasn't out there with Cade because they need to build that chemistry because they didn't play last season. I'm not going to go down like that rabbit hole with, they need to start in all 4 preseason games, but I can understand Monty's decision not to start them because you're missing one of your best 3-point shooters in Bojan.
And I think Monty said earlier that he was going to experiment with the starting lineups in preseason, that he hasn't solidified anything. So who knows? We might see Ivy start and Ausar Thompson come off the bench. We might see, Bojan and Ausar and Ivy with Cade all starting and Duren at the 5 and Isaiah Stewart coming off the bench. I mean, we might even see there's some other people that were tweeting out that they wouldn't mind seeing Killian on the perimeter. And after the game he had, you're like, yeah, and they even said like, hey, maybe take away the point guard duties and allow him just to focus on defense and being a connector. Glad people are starting to agree with me. That's great. Maybe you see a lineup with Killian Hayes starting alongside Cade Cunningham and Ausar Thompson or even Jaden Ivey. Maybe they put Killian at the 3. Who knows? Get crazy. It's preseason.
No, I do like that. I really do. I know some people were kind of like upset that Cade wasn't next to Ivy starting today.
Yeah.
But I think when you're a team like the Pistons and you can only go up from here, like you're probably not you're going to do better than 17 wins this season. I think it's okay to experiment in the preseason because Monty has said, he's like, I have a pretty good indication of what my starting lineup is going to be. He's just testing out, what clicks with what because, maybe the bench isn't set in stone yet. Maybe he wants to kind of see how different guys mesh on the bench. Like you had said, maybe you have Ausar off the bench with the Killian Hayes at the, shooting guard position and maybe Monte Morris at the point guard position. You never know. You just want to play with it and, see which players gel with each other and what players don't. I think that's what the preseason is all about is, just getting your rotations right.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be, I'm going to just tell fans, don't worry about it. Don't freak out. Just let preseason be preseason. This is a young team with 10 guys that it seems like could actually get pretty big minutes on this year's roster, even on other teams if they were over on another team. So, and it's Monty's first year in Detroit, so let's just give him a little slack and just see how it goes. I mean, I'm not going to worry about Ivy not starting. Who knows? He could be the 6th man of the year for all I know. I'll root for that. That'd be cool. Cade Cunningham, we all know he's a very special player. He has been compared to Tim Duncan in the way he carries himself and the way he prepares for the game and just the way, how it's not always about him. It's about the sacrifices he makes and how he's all about just the team, just like Tim Duncan. Cade Cunningham, in my opinion, he was born to be a franchise player, and Anthony rolled that clip.
We talk about taking the next step. You coming here is a part of that. A healthy Cade Cunningham is a part of that. You said he still plays like he's in high school. He's an NBA star, big picture, but he's moldable and he's coachable. And you said that was appealing to have in the guy who's leading your team.
Yeah, I feel like he has no entitlement about him. He steps on the floor. He reminds me of Tim Duncan in so many ways. When he steps on the floor, there's no, I should be on this team or I should get this call. He just goes about his business in a humble way. And yet there's a dog about him because he wants to be known as a great player and he wants to be in the class of the guys who are playing in all-star games and labeled all NBA and playing in playoff games. Like you can see that he wants that, but he doesn't, in my opinion, use his status as a number one pick and whatever people say about him to diminish people around him. And that's something that I think is really valuable, and it's a great sign of leadership.
So I want to give a shout out to Jenna Trotman from 7 Action News for allowing us to play that clip, first and foremost. And I absolutely love that from Monty Williams, saying that Cade doesn't have an ego, doesn't have entitlement, like some players in his draft class do. Some, former number one picks that we've seen in the news, reading articles like saying like, hey, I should get my 25 touches a night. Cade's not like that. He's more about the team, and I think we get to see that, but maybe some people on the outside don't get to see that. Like, we have his cousin Ashton from time to time, hop in the chat, talking about the Pistons. Like, I've talked to his brother, here and there a few times. Like, Cade's upbringing, to me, I think, is why he's such a good person and a good leader. He just was raised right as a kid, and I think that it's a reflection on him of, Monty Williams saying, like, he just comes in and he doesn't care if he's starting. He doesn't care, if Marcus Sasser gets 10 touches a night. He doesn't give a shit. Like, he just wants to see the team, play winning basketball. And I think that's what the Pistons need, honestly. I think that's what they've kind of lacked. It's just a selfless leader.
Yeah, and he's a guy that you can really build around. Just a guy that it doesn't matter what style of basketball you play, he's going to fit in, and he's always going to make the right play. He's always going to make the right decision. It may not always give you the result, but he is going to put your team in the best position to win a basketball game. And now that he's healthy, we're going to fully see it. It's going to be a fun ride this year being a Pistons fan, just watching him. And I'm glad that his personality is meshing so well with everybody, and even the coach is taking notice. Like, that's a high praise coming from Monty Williams to compare him to Tim Duncan. And we all know it's not like how Cade plays, it's just how he carries himself, and that's really cool, man.
Like I said, I'm glad you said that, because so many Spurs fans, like when I made that post on Facebook, they thought that Monty was talking about play style. It had nothing to do with play style. It has to do with character and the way he carries himself. And Monty would probably know because he played with the Spurs. He played with Tim Duncan. So I would trust his word versus, internet trolls saying, oh, he compared Cade Cunningham to Tim Duncan. No, more about his on the court, off the court, and just his personality. And I think that's important. I know Troy Weaver always talks about getting the person right, and I think that can just kind of solidify of Troy Weaver saying we got the person right, and Monty just clarified that kid's just a great human being.
And a lot of great franchise players, a lot of great basketball players, that seems to be their mentality. They're more of showing up, not talking, not being in people's faces. The guys that just show up and put in all the work and keep to themselves, they are the champions in the NBA. They're the guys that stand out, even though they don't have to do anything to stand out. They let their games do the talking for them. And yeah, that's what makes Cade special, man. And it's really cool to hear it from the coach, man.
Yeah, it really is. It's funny that, like, he said that he's still in high school because he's so coachable. Like, you would think when you get to the NBA, you kind of, like, lose that coachability because you're getting those big checks every 2 weeks. But the fact that he's so humble and he's willing to, get coached up by one of the best NBA coaches right now, I think it tells more about, like, the type of player he is.
Oh, 100%, man, 100%. Beef Jerky Joe. We got a nice little quote from him. This might be one of my favorite media day moments from Joe Harris, aka Beef Jerky Joe, and I really hope that jumps on as Pistons fans. We already got a beef too, so let's have Beef Jerky Joe as well. He talks about just trying to help lay down the foundation and the culture for the Detroit Pistons. And I'll let the clip play. I don't want to butcher what he says, but it is pretty great from Beef Jerky Joe.
I guess on the court, bro, what have they communicated to you? And obviously, you're one of the best shooters.
Yeah.
How do you see yourself kind of fitting in?
I don't know, and I haven't really discussed that with anybody a whole lot, but To be honest, I'm not overly concerned with it. Whether that's playing 15, 20 minutes a game or not playing at all. I think I can offer value in a lot of different ways. Where I've been around a lot of really good players, and I've been on some really good teams, and my approach is not going to change regardless of playing time, role, any of that stuff. I have a very certain way with how I do stuff, and it's been consistent since I've been in this league, and I'm going to continue to do it regardless of the role. But I think I offer value in the sense, just in that sense, where I'm going to come in, I'm going to do what's asked of me, I'm going to do my job. I'm not going to bitch and complain if I'm not playing. I'm going to try to help out, with these young guys, because I want to, honestly, I know I only have 1 year here, but I want to leave this in a better spot than what I came into. So however I can do that, I want to be a part of hopefully what's a strong foundation for the Pistons organization.
Dude, I absolutely love that from him. Like, when we traded for him, he was probably surprised. Like, the Pistons didn't have to help the Nets out so they could sign Cameron Johnson and get Joe Harris. They didn't have to do that. But Joe Harris hasn't really been promised anything. He's like, we traded for you because we heard good things about you, and you've been through similar rebuilds before. And we want you to help these young guys grow and develop. And he said, you know what? Like, I don't give a shit if I play or not. I'm not going to bitch and complain. He's like, I just want to help these young guys here. And I'm only going to be here for a year because my contract expires, but I'm going to make the most of it. And to me, that is what defines a role player. Whether you play or not, you want to see your teammates be successful. And that's exactly what he said. And I absolutely love that by him.
Oh, and I mean, it would be so easy for him to be annoyed, but he's just going to show up every single day. Doesn't matter, like he said, whether he's playing 15, 20 minutes a game or sitting on the bench. His approach stays the same. He's a pro's pro, and that is how you establish winning. Even if he is only here for a year, he's going to show these young guys, like, look, I'm one of the best three-point shooters in the history of the NBA. We saw the list during the preseason. It was Steve Kerr, Hubert Davis. I think Joe Harris was number 3, and then fan favorite Luke Kennard was number 4. He is on the list as one of the greatest three-point shooters ever to play this game. He could sit there and go to so many other teams and have a role, get minutes, and he's earned that by what he has already done, by his body of work. He has earned the right to say, look, I deserve minutes. I deserve to be a part of the rotation. Look how good I am. You can use my skill set. But instead of saying that, he's like, man, I'm just going to come in. I'm going to show these guys this is what it takes to be a player in this NBA. This is what it takes to have a long career. This is what it takes to make $19 million in 1 year playing a kid's game. You want to do that? You want to be here for a long time? Follow what I do. Show up every day. Show up like you're the star, even if you're not the star. That's what I got from Joe Harris. I also love the long hair and the goatee, the little beard thing he got going on. Looks like he's going to lead a cult. I'd be careful if I was in Detroit because it looks like people will follow him, man.
It's so funny because he talked about his vets when he was there. He talked about Jared Dudley and I believe Ed Davis were his vets when he was on Brooklyn, because I just looked up a roster from 2018 when Kenny Atkinson was the coach over there. I believe he said he also got to play with Bojan, because if you remember, Bojan was a draft and stash guy for the Brooklyn Nets. And he said he did get to play with Bojan for a little bit, which I found actually kind of cool. And they're two of the best three-point shooters in the NBA, and they're both on the Detroit Pistons. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, Beef Jerky Joe, I can't say it enough. I feel like he's going to go down as one of those guys we talk about for years and years and years as a Detroit Piston. I don't know why, but I just feel like there's going to be some moment during the season where he just lights it up and has one of those memorable moments that we're just going to remember for a long time and talk about, especially on this podcast, because we're both Joe Harris fans. Anyways, let's talk about this rebuild comment, because fans love to complain. There is no doubt about it, but there is no perfect way to do this when you're a team that has no valuable assets to kickstart a rebuild. We all knew it was going to take a couple of years, and we're finally at the stage where the Pistons will find out what they have in Cade, Ivy, Ausar, Duren, and Isaiah Stewart. But it still seems like fans are impatient with it. I saw a tweet earlier in the week that says we shouldn't be talking about what happened 3 years ago. It's time now. Why are you still bringing up the past? The thing is, dude, this is still a really young team. And we knew it was going to take a few seasons to get it right. And I'm happy with the direction that the Pistons have gone in. I'm glad to have this many young guys that look like they could potentially be multiple-time All-Stars. You got 4 on the team where they all might make at least one All-Star appearance, maybe even a few more down the line. Cade for sure, Ivy, Ausar, and Duren, the jury's still out, but they look solid. There's no perfect way to do this, and I really wish fans would just kind of relax and temper their expectations. I know it's been a long time since we've really competed for anything, but I promise you, we are on the verge of something special in Detroit.
Yeah, I think it's really easy for Pistons fans right now to have those comments, like you said, because if you look at teams that were in a similar situation as the Pistons, I'm going to use the Houston Rockets, for example, because I think that's another team that went through the rebuilding process. They've been in the lottery, just like the Pistons over the last couple of seasons. But Houston was like, you know what? We've been doing this for 3 years, 4 years. It's enough. We're ready to go all in. And that's what they did this offseason. Excuse me. You get Dylan Brooks. You get Fred VanVleet. You get rotational guys that make sense. You hire a championship level coach. They're ready to compete. Now, could the Pistons have done that this offseason? Yes, they could have. They could have gone all in. They could have gone splurging, and signed some free agents this summer to make this team just as competitive as the Houston Rockets. But I think the one thing when I look at Houston versus Detroit is what Houston did is very risky because it could blow up in their face and they could be rebuilding maybe in the next 3 to 4 years if it doesn't work out. But those are risks you have to take when you're an organization. Now, how it relates to the Detroit Pistons is Troy Weaver looked at the roster. They hired that, championship level coach in Monty Williams. They have their core guys that they're going to build around in Cade, Ivy, Ausar, and Duren. But Troy's telling you, I don't think we're ready yet. I don't think we're ready for that veteran that's really going to take us over the top yet. And whether I agree with it or not, I'm willing to be patient because this team has never gone through a rebuild like this in my entire life as being a Detroit Piston fan. Exactly. This is the first time I've ever seen so much young and up-and-coming talent on this basketball team. I was spoiled with the go-in-the-work Pistons, and I was even spoiled growing up in the Grant Hill era. They were still making the playoffs each and every year. But this is a team that is building organically through the draft. They might be marginal pieces that you get each and every year. You draft Cade, you get Ivy, you get Duren, you get Ausar, you get Marcus Sasser. You sign vets like a Monte Morris, who I hope we keep. You trade for Joe Harris, you trade for Bojan. I'm willing to be patient, but I can understand the Piston fan that's saying, you know what, I don't ever want to go through what we've gone through over the past 4 years under Troy Weaver. And I think you need to add context to that because when Troy took over, he had no cap space, he had no trade assets, and when you have to start a rebuild from the ground up and you have no tradable assets, I want to use Portland as an example right now.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the Trailblazers, they had Damian Lillard, and they got a shitload of assets for Damian Lillard. And then they trade Drew Holiday to Boston, even more assets. And you look at the Portland Trailblazers young core, that's how rebuilds can really amplify and really speed up is when you have those tradable assets. The Pistons' tradable assets before Troy Weaver got there were Andre Drummond. Got a second-round pick for him, and Brandon Knight. John Henson. You really didn't get a whole lot. Blake Griffin was not tradable unless you threw a first-round pick onto his contract, and the Pistons weren't in a position to do that. And I think a lot of Pistons fans, maybe they forget, or maybe they don't want to have this conversation because it's hard, because you didn't like the Blake Griffin trade in the first place and you thought it kind of set the team back 3-4 years. You're right, it did, but I think context matters, and I know Pistons fans are sick of losing. I'm sick of them losing. I really am, and I think you are too. You want them to get back into the playoffs and compete, and I think it'll happen. It's just when you look at rebuilds across the NBA, the Pistons are one of the very few teams that started from scratch. They didn't have a tradable asset to fast-track the rebuild. I mean, even the Magic, they got the trade to Aaron Gordon and other pieces, Nikola Vucevic to the Bulls. I mean, they had a fast-track rebuild as well because they had tradable assets. The Pistons have never had that. I think Pistons fans, maybe they forget, or maybe they're just so pissed off that this team hasn't won a playoff game in 14 years, which it's understandable, but you have to take into account who was running the team at the time and, what the goal was, what from the owner. So, I mean, like I said, dude, I know I just ranted for like maybe, 5 minutes of like why this organization has been, rebuilding for the last 4 years. And it's just little marginal improvements, but I know the Pistons time is coming. We just have to stay patient with it. And I think you hired the right coach to get the most out of the players that you currently have. But that's just my message to Pistons fans that are frustrated with it. But do you have anything to add to it?
No, I was just going to say I've been happy with it. I mean, even though watching only 17 wins last year was tough, but I love the position the Pistons are in right now. You have a franchise player in Cade. You have a two-way star in Ausar Thompson. You have a quick lightning rod point guard in Jaden Ivey. And you have a guy in Jalen Duren that could potentially be one of the 10 best players in the NBA alongside Cade Cunningham. The Pistons have never had that. I mean, you have a GM with an actual direction in which he wants to take this team. You have a head coach that has had failures, has had the highest and the highest of highs and the lowest of lows in the NBA as a head coach. He's been around. Like, that is incredible. You still have assets now that are going to be moved off your books, and Joe Harris and Bojan. That's, I think, $39 million they're going to have to play with next year. And I would rather have them slow it down and use that money next offseason when they know what they have. If Cade looks like he's going to be a top 25 player, top 15 player, whatever it is, you can go out and spend that money on a Pascal Siakam, on maybe an Aaron Gordon, or on whoever else is in free agency that can push this team over the top. But you have to see what you have, because if you shortcut a rebuild, we're going to be back in this position in just a few seasons where we're going to be looking back and be like, man, if they had just taken their time and if the Pistons were just a little bit more patient, we'd be better situated. But if we rush it, we take a shortcut, we cut through the grass when we should stay on the sidewalk, it's going to suck, and we're going to be right back where we're at. I love what Troy Weaver is doing, but I get why Pistons fans are upset. But you also have to look back, like you were saying. Look what we had 3 years ago. We had nothing on this team that was of value to anybody else. And it was a steep hill to climb, but man, we're actually out of the hole now. I mean, we're in a favorable position. And I think a lot of fan bases would love to be in the position that the Pistons are in. Yeah, maybe we don't win a ton of games this year, but we're going to win more than 17, and we're going to be able to be excited about it. And we're going somewhere with this roster.
Yeah, I think, like I said, that context does matter because, Portland, they're going to be in good position. Orlando, great position. But, they had tradable assets. We don't have that. Even New Orleans, when they traded Anthony Davis, look how quickly New Orleans became a bottom feeder to people talking about them being Western Conference contenders with Zion and Brandon Ingram. And this past season, or last season, I should say, they traded for CJ McCollum because they were ready to make that next move in their, stage of trying to compete. I think the Pistons can get there. It's just, you have to get those pieces in place. And like you said, you don't really know what you have in Cade Cunningham yet. Like if he's a top 15 player, you go out and get that Brandon Ingram. You go out and get that complementary player to help this team get to the playoffs. It'll happen. We just have to wait and see what we have in this young core. And it's extremely young. Maybe you trade some of that young core for a superstar. You never know. Like Jaden Ivey, he's valuable. Ausar Thompson's valuable. Jalen Duren's valuable. Like you never really know what could happen over these next couple of seasons with the Pistons, but I don't want to sound like I'm a Troy Weaver like faithful by any means. If I don't agree with something he does, I come on this podcast and I tell you. If I like something he does, I come on this podcast, I tell you. I try to keep it strictly down the middle. I'm not trying to drink the Pistons Kool-Aid like some other Pistons fans, and I think the Pistons fans that do that, there's nothing wrong with that, but I just try to be as fair as I can. When I see good things happen, when I see bad things happen, I'll let you know. But I think for what he took over, he's doing the best he can, man. Like, I don't think anyone else could have, turned this organization around so quickly because he had to get his cap space right. Like, I couldn't tell you the last time the Pistons had cap space the last 2 seasons. I can't remember it because it seems like we always overpaid for free agents, whether it was like, Ben Gordon or Charlie V or Josh Smith or giving Andre Drummond a max, giving Reggie Jackson $80 million. Like, I could go down the list. Like, we haven't really had cap flexibility, and I think that's something that he's brought to this organization. And I think when the time comes, the Pistons will make that big game move. They'll try to get that star next to Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren, Ausar Thompson, to try to get that playoff spot.
Yeah, and I like that. I mean, I don't love every move he's made, and I am a believer in Weaver, but also at the same time, like if you make a dumb decision, I will talk about it. I got no issue doing that. I'm not going to be like, oh no, he's everything he's done has been great. But he's also a GM that will make tough decisions that fans hate, that will potentially, they may not make sense right at the moment, but they have the potential to look way better when you look down the line, and we're at that spot. And I think there's a couple of tough decisions coming up. Like you were saying,
Sure.
Like we have a young team, and who knows, 2 of these guys could be flipped for maybe a Devin Booker. I have no idea. You know what I'm saying? If Troy thinks like, hey, Devin Booker and Cade Cunningham, that'd make one hell of a backcourt. That would push us over the top. I got to send 2 of these guys out. See ya. That's what I'm going to do. I don't know, but he is the GM that will make those decisions, and he will make those the tough decisions because it seems like he kind of keeps emotion out of it. And I feel like some GMs, they fall into a trap of like, well, that was my guy. I want to see if these guys can win. And you know what I'm saying? Because they're the guys that I brought in. He's not a GM like that. He may be like, you know what, I love the pick at the time, but man, I'm going to flip him and I'm going to make this team even better. And that's what I believe in with Troy Weaver. There are some tough decisions coming, and I'm glad he is in the GM spot to make them.
Yeah, and I also am glad that Tom Gorza stayed out of it a little bit.
Yes.
Because, there have been times where he wanted that star to sell tickets. And I bet you he's selling more tickets now with Cade and Ivey. I know he has because when I got a call about a month ago for my season ticket package, which I don't really have. I don't know why they call it a season ticket package when you buy 10 or more games. It's the stupidest thing ever. But, dude, the price went up over $150.
Dude,
you can't tell me that he's not making money off of these young up-and-coming guys. And, like, we were 12th in attendance last year, and we had 17 wins. Like, come on, man. Seriously?
I remember it was Cade's rookie year. I was able to sit 12 rows behind the Pistons bench. I got 2 tickets a game. It was just a 7-game ticket package, but it was like $80 a ticket. And now I think those same seats are probably $300 or $400 a seat. Like I remember they called me and they told me, yeah, for the same seats, instead of it costing you like what, $900, I think it was, or something for those 7 or 8 games, whatever I got, it would be like $3,500 a person just to sit in the same spot the following year. They're like, well, they're going to be playing the top 20 teams or whatever. And I was like, I don't even know what you guys are trying to sell me right now, but this team isn't going to be that good. It was crazy, but yeah, it is nuts. He is definitely making some money off these young guys. Do we have any Q&A questions?
Let me check. This is actually a question that we got from John Buck, which I find it very interesting because he asked, when you guys watch a game, what is your focus on? For 30 years, I've watched the ball, and then one day I focused off the ball, and I actually see plays develop, and I was amazed.
For me, I definitely used to watch the ball all the time, but these last 2, maybe even 3 years, I try to focus off the ball and try to watch the plays develop and see what I see. But sometimes my eyes go right back to watching the ball because, especially when it's someone like Cade, I want to see. I'm looking for the decision he's going to make, but also how the play transpires for him to make that decision. So I guess I'm watching a little bit of both, but I definitely, as I've become a little older in my basketball watching, I definitely try to focus more off the ball to see how those plays develop, like you do, John.
So this is what I do, and it has nothing to do with watching the game. What I actually do is I listen to the opposing team's announcers
Oh, wow.
because I don't want to listen to George and Greg hype up the Pistons and tell me everything's good and rainbows and all that bullshit. I want the opposing announcers giving me their unbiased opinion and telling me, hey, this guy sucks. Like, tell me how it is. Like, and you learn a lot listening to the opposing team's announcing team. Like, probably my favorite is the Washington Wizards because Drew Gooden's on for the Washington Wizards, and he's a very good analyst. Not to say that I don't love George and Greg. I do. It's just there are times when I'm listening to them, and it's just like, man, there's no juice flowing in this broadcast right now. Like, at one point tonight, they pointed the camera at Matt Ishbia and they talked about Michigan State for 5 minutes and they weren't even focused on the game. But that's just my question, or my answer to this question is I listen to the opposing broadcast as often as I can because I want to get perspective of how they view the team, where they think that the team is going, what their opinions are on the moves we're making and stuff like that. And you learn a whole lot listening to the opposing broadcast versus your home team broadcast.
Yeah, that is one thing I would like to. I wish the Pistons would change, that there would be just a little bit more education when I'm watching the game. I would really like for someone to break down the plays and talk about, what they're seeing on the floor and then, tell it to me as the viewer. I would love to know what they're watching and what they're seeing. And I think it's just it's kind of a boring broadcast when you're watching the Pistons. No offense to George Blaha and Special K. They are legends in Detroit. They've been doing it for such a long time. It's just there are times where you're listening to them, like you got to be standing up and like drinking a pot of coffee to stay awake. Like even though basketball is being played on TV, they know how to put you to sleep, man. And again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful because like I'm not the best broadcaster at all myself. I'm sure I've put a few people to sleep when I call these high school games, but there's a real art to it, and I just feel like the Pistons could use a fresher breath air, I guess, in that
Yeah, like I think it's coming. It's just like they're such legends, like especially George Blaha. He's been broadcasting for over 40 plus years, and they probably want to send him out on his own terms. Like they're not going to say like you have to quit.
I get it.
Yeah, like you got to respect that. Like he'll probably get a jersey retirement, and his name will probably go up in the Raptors for just broadcasting the Pistons over the last 40 years. He's a legend in that, right? But I do agree with Chuck when he says Blaha. He needs to hang it up. He just doesn't have it. He's just like, go listen to Blaha from 04 compared to today. It's not even close. Yeah, he's aged a whole lot. We all have. But I mean, like he still has my respect. He's a legend, and Greg Kelser too. Like he's been doing it just as long, not just as long, but he's been doing it for quite some time. But I do agree with you. I think you do need some juice. Like you need some like Charlotte Hornets announcer juice when he freaks out because LaMelo Ball touched the basketball. I need that type of energy with Ausar and Cade Cunningham, because that would be just entertaining to me.
Yeah, no, it really would be. And it would make the broadcast a little bit better if you get that energy, but you also had someone in there like breaking down the play and telling you what is going on so you know what to pay attention to on the floor. Because sometimes it just feels lost when you're not watching the ball and you just see guys run around the floor. You're like, well, what are they doing? And I feel like the NFL does such a great job of breaking down plays, even in the middle of a game, where you're like, yeah, if you watch the quarterback eyes and he's looking off the Mike linebacker and you see the safety pull over, this is why he makes that throw. You're like, oh, damn, dude, you guys are really going in depth. This is incredible. You just don't get that with the Pistons broadcasters. And I don't know. I don't want to just speak so ill of them, but I just wish it was a little better in Detroit.
No, you're not alone. Like, I think we all respect them as, legends on the broadcasting team, but it's like you have Johnny Kane, which, I like Johnny Kane as a person, but like maybe you give him a couple games this year, a couple more games this year, maybe, I don't know, throw Natalie Kerwin out there. I'm just throwing names out there, just to have, some, fresh juice out there and a different perspective of the game. Some people that are a little bit younger, but like, hey, maybe they just haven't found that guy yet. But we do have another question from Marty, which this is right up my wheelhouse. And I don't really know if you know who's on the Cruise roster. But so with all the injuries, who might be the next guy up from the Cruise? Not that I want it to happen, just curious. I think the next guy up that could possibly play with all the trades they made, I would probably say Jonte Porter. Even though he is on the training camp roster, I think there is some intrigue there, not only from fans because he's Michael Porter Jr.'s brother, but the guy can play. He can stretch the floor. He can pass. He plays that forward position. He's a player that I'm very intrigued to see how he does playing against NBA players, not G League players. But I think he's a name that I would look out for if I'm a Piston fan. If you didn't know that the Pistons did sign him to a training camp deal, he actually got traded from the Milwaukee Bucks affiliate to the Pistons affiliate. So that happened a couple of weeks ago. And it's funny because the old Motor City Cruise coach is now an assistant for the Milwaukee Bucks coach. And the Milwaukee Bucks affiliate coach is Beno Udrih.
Awesome.
It just all, like, if you guys remember Beno Udrih with the crazy blonde hair, he actually coaches the Bucks affiliate team, the Wisconsin Herd. So much like crazy stuff goes on in the G League, but just wanted to update you guys.
Yeah, he's I love Beno, like with the left-handed. He was a good 2K player, but also Jonte Porter, he's a pretty good defender too. Like he can block some shots, smart guy, doesn't rely a ton on his athleticism. But I think you had pointed out 2 episodes ago when we talked about him, I think he only shot like 27% from 3, but he does have confidence in the jumper, and he could be a pretty nice stretch 5 if he looks good against NBA talent.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't really know if he's gonna get any playing time in preseason, but like I'll probably cover him with the Cruise this year, and they really don't have a whole lot of depth at that forward center position. But I mean, if he shows out in preseason, you never know. But
what about Malcolm Caslon?
I mean, he's a two-way guy. When I watch him play, I just don't really know if he'd get any burn just because we have so many guards.
Yeah.
But he could play small forward if you wanted him to. It's just his shot. It's not broken, but it needs work. But I mean, he reminds me of just like a poor man's I can't think of the kid's name right now. It's gonna bug me. I can't remember. Like a poor man's Kelly Oubre.
Ooh, okay.
It's just, Kelly Oubre can actually like hit some 3-point shots. This guy, it's just like sometimes it goes in, sometimes it doesn't. He's scrappy defensively and he can pass, but like I think Casalon's going to spend a lot of time being the star of the G League over there with Jared Roden and all those guys. But I really wouldn't look at our G League team as going down there to get players, because it seems like our G League team isn't like really a true farm system. It's just kind of just signing guys and drafting guys and just throwing players out there and seeing if it works.
Yeah. No, I've never really been impressed with our G League team. Never have been. I feel like some teams really utilize it and they get the most out of those guys. And they always seem – there's some teams in the NBA that have a couple guys on their G League roster where you're like, man, these guys will probably end up getting contracts. Doesn't feel the same way in Detroit.
Yeah, like Roden is nice in the G League. He's just, to me, like, he plays in the NBA. It seems like he's just really nervous or he's not ready. But like you watch him in a G League game and he'll drop like 30. But I don't like that's just like some G League players though, man. Like they can drop 30 in the G League and they come to the NBA and they have a hard time scoring 2 points. Like the competition between the G League and the NBA is like vastly different.
100%.
They don't play defense in the G League. I'll let you answer this question. So I feel like this is something you would probably like put in our prep sheet. What aspect of Ausar's game are you looking forward to the most?
I'm really looking at the defense, man. That's the biggest thing for me. I'm not going to pay because I know he's going to score off hustle points. Like he's going to get offensive rebounds. He's going to cut to the basket. He's going to get points when the play breaks down because he's always moving. But defensively, that's the thing I'm going to watch the most because I really feel like that's his calling card in the NBA. I want to see him take on those tough matchups. I want to see him guard the Devin Bookers, the Zach LaVines. I want to see that night in and night out. And that's what I'm looking forward to the most is just the defense from Ausar, man, because it just feels like he could really change the game on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of parts of his game where it's just like I'm excited about his passing. I'm excited about his defense. I'm excited about his switchability. I think the one thing with him where I'm excited to see him play, like what aspect of his game that I'm looking forward to the most, is probably more in the transition game, because I feel like that's where he operates the best. He had a couple opportunities today where he was in the transition game against the Suns, but I really think if you had him and Jaden Ivey out there, man, that would be a nightmare to try to guard because you got to pick your poison.
Yeah,
that's probably the one part of his game that I'm looking forward to most, and obviously the defensive part of his game I think is very intriguing because the guy can basically switch from point guards to power forwards just because he's so versatile defensively. But for me, it's transition, Ryan. Definitely the transition game. Ooh, this is a good question. Then we can wrap up the podcast. So it seems like we've always been on for 2 hours, like each and every week, but that's why I love it. Favorite in-person Piston memory?
Man, I mainly went to games when it was the down years, so it's kind of tough to say. But I would say for me, because I've mainly gone to Pistons games in my adult life. It's not even my favorite memory was actually taking my daughter to her first Pistons game. I know that might be kind of corny and like, I don't know, taking the easy way out of it, but that really was my favorite moment. Just her, like her eyes lighting up when we first walked in and her just going to see everything. That was cool. I couldn't even tell you who we played in that game. But that's probably my favorite in-game memory, favorite in-person Pistons memory. I just really don't have no game that really has stood out to me because I haven't been to too many great ones. I mean, yeah. I feel every time I've gone to a game, the Pistons have lost I would say the matchup between Cade and Luka, that was pretty cool to go to because they're pretty similar players and you could kind of see those two going at it for a few years and being like one of those rivalries down the line, that might have been probably my favorite moment, was watching those two play against each other. Because I didn't get to go when I was younger, when I was a kid. My parents were just like, nah, we're not going to Detroit. We're good. Like, even though it was at Auburn Hills. And then I think the first time I went to a Pistons game, I might have been like 19 or 20 years old, maybe even a little older than that. And it was LeBron James' last time playing against the Pistons in a Miami Heat jersey. And he had like the quietest 28 points I've ever seen. And I realized, like, damn, dude, the 28 points just kind of comes out of nowhere. Like, when you're watching a great player like that, he just shows up and does it. It's kind of weird, man. Like, you don't even notice it. And then you look up at the box score on the Jumbotron, and you're like, holy crap, that's crazy. I don't know. That's just kind of my answer.
So this question got me thinking. I have my worst memory at a Pistons game, and probably the best. I'll go with my worst. My worst is watching Anthony Davis set the record for the most points scored at the Palace of Auburn Hills. I think he had like 60 points or something like that with the Pelicans. Man, that was insane. Like, he could not miss. He was just a man possessed. That was probably my worst memory because, I hadn't been to a Pistons game in a long time, and he just torched the Pistons. And I think that was under Van Gundy too, which made it even funnier because he threw everybody to guard Anthony Davis, but no one could handle him. And I would probably say my most recent favorite in-person memory is I went to a game with a friend of mine. You guys probably see him on Twitter all the time. Isaac. He does all the food reviews, Saturday. So me and him went to a game together, and he's got like really good seats. It's like right by the tunnel. And the reason why it's my favorite Piston memory is me and him are at the game, and someone took a picture of him by the, how like they have the glass by the, when they go into the locker room?
Yeah.
Well, someone took a picture and it looked like he flipped off Isaiah Stewart. And it went viral on social media. I'm like, dude, are you at a Pistons game with Andy Isaac? I was like, yeah, I am actually. He's like, dude, he just flipped off Luka Garza and Isaiah Stewart. It's like, no way.
That's awesome.
Yeah, like that's like probably the most recent like good memory. But I mean, I could go back like against the Cavs and the Pistons in the playoffs, like that atmosphere. I went to, I don't remember which game it was, but it was the first time we were in the playoffs under Van Gundy, and just the atmosphere and how electric it was in there, man. Like, I want that feeling back. Like, playoff atmosphere in Detroit, there's nothing like it. Like, I couldn't hear for a good 4 to 5 hours after I got home. Like, my ears were still buzzing. That's how loud that place was. There's nothing like it. But I'm sure there's some people in the comments saying they went to the Isaiah Stewart LeBron brawl, which that was probably crazy. Someone said that his mom was at the Malice at the Palace and he went 110 miles on the freeway to make sure she was good. That's crazy, man. I couldn't imagine if like my mom was at the Malice at the Palace and I wasn't with her. That'd be crazy.
I was supposed to be at that Isaiah Stewart LeBron James brawl. I was supposed to be at that game. I actually got offered tickets, but I could not make it. I forget why, but that sucks. I just remember watching on TV and I'm like, damn, I missed this. I could have been here. What? That would have been. It's kind of weird how like sometimes the moments you want to be at have nothing to do with basketball.
Yeah. I will say, like, going to some Pistons games and like the halftime show, like our halftime shows are probably the worst in the NBA. Like, I saw one where I swear to God, I thought it was the Teletubbies, but it was just like Detroit. I think it was like Detroit street dancing, but they were dressed up like in Teletubbies, like uniforms. I'm like, what the fuck is this?
That is terrible. Yeah, I don't think I've ever really been to a great halftime show at a Pistons game. I don't really have a recollection of any of them.
I mean, like, some of the halftime shows are like really bad. Like, I remember people were saying, "Oh, Babytron's performing at halftime," and I was just like, "Bro, like, I'd rather listen to Sada Baby perform at halftime than Babytron."
I don't think I've ever actually listened to any Babytrons. I've listened to Sada, but never Babytron.
Well, that's your homework. Listen to Babytron, then you'll see why.
Okay, I'll give it. I mean, there's a reason I haven't listened to it, but because I have a feeling it's not very good. But
I mean, he's got a song about Cade Cunningham.
I mean, I shouldn't even say that. Like, I'm sure it's good, but I mean, I love hip hop, but it's probably not the hip hop I really like. So it's all good.
All right. Well, we could wrap up this podcast. Why don't you tell the people where they can find it, where they can give us a rating? Because we got to get our ratings up a little bit, you guys. We're trying to get our ratings up on Spotify, Apple, and Google, but I tell the people where they can find it.
Yeah, the thing that blows my mind is how do we have so many people that have subscribed to it but do not leave ratings? It's honestly crazy to me. But I do appreciate everybody that has subscribed to it. But thank you guys for listening to the Pistons Talk podcast. Do us a favor, go to Google, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe. After you subscribe, leave a review, drop a rating, but more importantly, tell a Pistons fan.
Peace, guys.